Welcome back to the channel. Thank y'all for hanging with me on this Friday. So these are my 4 top baits for the month of December. We're going to probably have cold fronts that are massive this time of year, and your lake is going to really chill off. The bait should be in the same area, so you can still catch them on a lot of those November baits. The fishing doesn't change that much when it comes to the baits, but post-frontal days where the fishing gets super tough is definitely going to change the types of lures that you catch them on, because in December, when you have cold water and high sunny sky type days, fishing's not going to be like it is in February and March, where you have fish that know the spawn is approaching and they're coming shallow. You really have fish that are wintering. They're not really up shallow yet to get ready to spawn, where they're going to push way up there. Not to say that I don't fish shallow this time of year, because I do. All my baits are shallow techniques, but they're not getting everywhere shallow like they are going to do in February, March, and April when you still have cold water. This time of year, it's going to be more channel swing banks. It's going to be shallow cover and shallow type structure, but not near the spawning flats like they will be in 3 months. So let's talk about my top 4 baits to get bites when it's cold. The first one is going to be a Lure Jensen speed trap. Storm makes it now. If you go on Tackle Warehouse, you can actually get a Lure Jensen or a Storm one. There's also one called a Cherry Bomb. I forget who makes that, but it's made by Hank Cherry. Go look at that. That's a really good bait. They all kind of have a version of them. I know there's called a Speed Demon made by Spro. So there's a bunch of new ones of this original bait made. So if you don't like this one, you have other options. Now, speed trap, I've done some videos on it recently. This is going to be more of a steep bank technique when you have some type of cloud cover. You don't necessarily need to be tight lining a minnow on a jig head. You have better fishing conditions, and you can go down those 45-degree and steeper type banks, riprap being my favorite. And the speed trap comes in a lot of good colors. Your reds, your shad patterns are going to be typically where I'm throwing this, because I'm throwing it in colder water, so I'm not getting into the dirtier stuff yet. So your chartreuses and those type colors, this is more of a cold water technique, and those fish just haven't really got into that stained water yet. So clear water, riprap, that's going to be your perfect scenario with some wind or some clouds or both. So good crankbait, cold water. Now the next, and arguably you could make a case that these are all the best cold water crankbaits, and that's pretty much what I'm going to do. Anytime I get to a lake and I don't really know where the bait is at, and I know it's going to be a struggle just to entice a fish, cranking is going to be a big part of my plan, and rock is going to be a big part of my plan. And not every lake has rock just everywhere on it. You know, those lakes that are covered in rock, you want to start really dialing in the size rock and the steepness of the banks that the rock is on. But on lakes where you kind of have to go a ways to find some rock, go a ways and find that rock. Riprap, any type of like railroads or causeways typically have some type of rock on it. And the rock isn't going to always be up on the bank. A lot of times those boulders will roll off the causeway and go down into the water, creating a high spot where bass can ambush shad. So look for that, and you'll feel it with your crankbait if you don't have electronics. You'll see it with your side imaging if you want to scan around a little bit, but rock is going to be the deal for me. So this is arguably one of the next best cold water crankbaits, and this is a Rapala DT6. So there's a bunch of different depth ranges in the DT series. The 6 is a really good one anytime you're reeling that bait really slow in 3 to 5 feet of water. So yeah, if you're burning it, you can get it out to 6, but this time of year, it's going to be a slow wind. I'm typically fishing this in shallower than 6 feet, so it's going to be 3-4 foot range for me. That's a really high percentage type place in depth range this time of year. So this can be thrown in grass. This can be thrown on rocky banks. The only problem with is if you have really steep banks, you're not going to be able to get it down. So if you're out in that 8 to 12 foot range, the wiggle wart's going to be a much better crankbait. You're not going to catch them on this. But if you're fishing more flatter type banks, shallower type banks, the DT6 is going to be the best cold water crankbait. So if you have a lake where the bass like to really get in the mud, when you have 48-degree water temp, and there's a lot of different theories on why they do that, and they definitely do that on a lot of different fisheries, this is a great way to catch them if they're not going to bite a square bill. So you can reel this a lot slower than you would a 1.5 or a 2.5. Now, things have really gone bad. That's when I turn to a Shad Rap. So if I'm not getting bites on any of those two crankbaits, which is what I would prefer to be doing, you need to be bailed out with this. And that's what this is. This is an insurance policy. I sometimes just leave it on my deck and never catch anything on it, and that means the day went a lot better than I was expecting. A lot of times when I have an hour or two left, I'm going to have to get on a windy type bank with it to my back and throw it as far as I can, monofilament. Maybe I start the day out with this bait when the bite is the best to try to get 2 or 3 bites, try to catch 1 or 2 fish, and then spend the rest of my 7 hours trying to catch 3 more. So this is a really good way to just get a bite when nothing else will work. That's it. I'm not probably going to catch my big fish on this unless I go to the Carolinas or something. You can catch 20 pounds on this, and I know a lot of guys that have. I've got a lot of buddies that have went to the Carolinas and caught every single one on a Shad Rap. I don't do that too much around here. It's a couple bites in the morning to just kind of feel out how this day is going to go. So Shad Rap, I keep it in that crawdad color. I've done some other videos talking about this. I'm going to be throwing this first thing, cloudy, low light type conditions. If the fishing is so tough that they won't bite a crawdad color Shad Rap, it's probably not a crank and bite for me that day. I'm probably going to have to get on some 45-degree banks and tight line some type of minnow bait. That's how bad the fishing is. So like wintertime fishing, you got to at least give it a shot. Clouds is what you really want. All right, so the last one, just to get some bites, is going to be some type of jigging spoon. Cotton Cordell CC spoon's really good. This is one that I've been throwing a little bit lately. It's just one of those things where you're still going to see some fish schooling this time of year. You know, there's going to be big pods of bait in some of these areas, and a jigging spoon is just one of those techniques where they just bite it. You know, it's not hard to get them to bite that lure. So bomb it out there. You can throw it a mile. I rig it up on just regular 12, 15-pound fluorocarbon line. And this is going to be something that I can throw around bridges. This is something that I can throw when the bass show themselves. So it's one of those techniques that is really a big deal when you get out into those Ozark Lakes, Table Rock, the White River chain out there in the winter months. But this works everywhere. You know, we know where a lot of the bait is at. You know, the bait is going to be in the creek channels. Everything is kind of funneling back out into the river channel and the creek channels. And when you get around some type of structure near that, and you see some bait on your graph, or you just see it visually with your eyes coming up, it doesn't hurt to throw a jigging spoon at them. This is the time of year where you really got to make yourself lucky. You got to try some different things. I know I put a lot of eggs in the cranking basket, and that usually is enough to catch you some bass and get some numbers in the boat. The jigging spoon can be what sets you apart. So this is another one of those techniques where you can let it sink all the way to the bottom. You can fish it for suspended fish. So it's very versatile. And when you get on that steep bluff type wall, doesn't hurt to just throw it when you know there's some bait around. So that's one of those things for me. I'm just going to keep it honest. I'm not going to throw it for an hour. I'll make 20, 30 casts with it, and you may catch them every cast. I mean, that's what a jigging spoon can do this time of year. And you'll catch everything. You can catch crappie on it. You can catch all kinds of different fish. So they're all out there for the bait. And a lot of times that'll just tell you there's bait in the area. You'll catch striped bass. You'll catch pretty much anything on this that is out there chasing that little bait fish around. So does the best job of imitating that little shad that I know about. Try those 4 baits if you're struggling to get some bites this time of year. Good luck to you, and I'll see you on the water.